Hi, John here. It's Wednesday today, the 28th of August 2024. I want you to listen to these two young professionals. Lyn Alden, she's talking to Alexj Jordanov, and it's very impressive. I'm surprised that I learned quite a bit from them, and I will put the video up on the website. That's the direction we're going to take. I'll keep in touch with them. From today, I'll alter my work day to do all our business right up till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then I'll go to the gym. I won't go in the morning because I need to be in touch with our business in England or Westminster City, and our office where we set up long ago in Piccadilly, or we're going into Westminster City better and set our business up there. Moai Powerhouse Group Limited company, and re-kick it off again with a new crew that I'm going with my original secretary there, and put things back together here in New Zealand with Home Guard and Gregory Cook, and what I'm supporting as the Moai Crown Native Magistrate King's Bench Court here to sort out the Parliament here, and also the Parliament in Westminster City in London, and sort both partnerships out with our flag. The Confederation of the United Tribes, 1834, founding of New Zealand flag, and also the connection it has with the British flag, and the land laws, or the laws of England, and the Church of England re-established, and also the the High Court of Admiralty in Westminster, and our King William III of Orange, Bank of England Act 1694, and our two-bar Patterson pound note 1694 Act, and also the 1689 Constitution of Britain, the UK, and England, and its War Powers Act, the War Powers Act, to protect our business partnership. First party is us here with the flag on dry land and in the sea. Contract with the second party, England sovereign natives, with our Aotea New Zealand sovereign native people born on the land. Okay, so here we go. I'll switch this around, and Alexj Jordanov, interviewer, and also Lyn Alden. She's got the best explanation of all that I've ever heard with young people and their next generation, which I want to pass on all my energy skills on the tidal turbine hydrogen project, where Lyn is saying that their Bitcoin goes to where the energy is, and especially wasted energy to power up their computers to run the Bitcoin, as quite a bit of energy needed to run the whole Bitcoin system. Okay, so that's where we're going with the big hydrogen platform bridge in the sea to provide all the energy that's required for such an operation on a big scale. Okay, so here we go. I'll just switch this on and we'll have a listen to Lyn. He's an engineer. He's also a strategist for startup companies like ours, and also into the investment part of the Bitcoin mining projects where the energy is on volcanoes and wasted energy coming off the coal mines and all that, or the drilling for oil and the gas they burn off and flare off. They'll save all that as well and recycle it through the Bitcoin energy system of the computers. Okay, so here we go. I'll flip that. Ready to go.
So you're saying it's obvious.
Yeah, I think
it's the only way.
Yeah, I think that things, if you were to describe it 5 years ago, and I did, you didn't see more skepticism. Like, oh no, they'll figure it out, or but now when we're kind of at this later, more advanced stage, it's becoming more talked about in institutional circles that there's a real fiscal problem happening at the federal level and in some other countries as well. And so there's an appreciation for some of these harder assets.
And what I thought was interesting was the fact that Vanguard just fired its own CEO after 35 years of service, I think.
He's leaving. I haven't looked into the details of what the official, statement.
But it's just timing-wise a bit funny, I find.
So for Vanguard, it's funny because like the CEO said, we're not going to allow our clients to buy it, and then he's he's leaving the company, and of course people can make the connection in the memes, and who knows if they're really related. But I do. So Vanguard's history, they're all in on the 60/40 portfolio concept. They're all in on passive stocks, passive bonds. They've been very anti-commodity, anti-gold, and now they kind of put Bitcoin in the same category. And they say that these are just not things we want to offer to our clients in any meaningful way. And so some people rotated out of Vanguard. They went elsewhere. But that's, of course, a small percentage of the trillions of dollars that Vanguard has under management. I think it really won't sting for Vanguard until Bitcoin is, say, 10x bigger than here. Maybe it takes a couple more cycles to get there. But if they kind of just miss out on $10 trillion of wealth creation that they and their entire client base were not exposed to, that would hit hard. I mean, 10 years ago today, I saw a tweet. Buffett was asked about Bitcoin and criticized it, and it's been the best performing asset since then. The only thing roughly on par with it is like Nvidia on the same sort of scale.
Yeah.
And he just completely dismissed it, and it outperformed anything he invested in.
Yeah, because it's also his world, right? And he's only able, and there's a common say in investment, right? It's only invest in what you understand.
Yeah.
And that's what he's said himself, actually, I think.
Yeah.
Right? I'm quoting it from him. And he's sticking to that.
True, but a smarter way to... So people are often careful to talk about what they don't know. So, for example, for many tech stocks, he'd say, look, it's just outside of my scope. I'm not going to invest in it. He wouldn't trash talk the asset. Whereas with Bitcoin, he'll criticize it, objectively call it a bad investment. Like he's saying it's not just me. He's saying that is a bad asset. It's a toxic asset. It's rat poison squared. So he's claiming to understand it and being wrong for a decade.
Maybe because he just FOMO'd into that.
Yeah. So it's funny. His father was into gold, and Buffett's investing career lined up in an era where just owning stocks was the way to go for a very long time. His business partner, Munger, was also very critical of Bitcoin. And it's funny because I think it's because he actually understands it. He would rarely describe it as a bad investment. Instead, he would describe it as evil. He would view it as a disruption to central banks. But he's on the other side. He wants central banks. He does not want...
He's at the proximity of the cantillon, the tap. He's just slurping from it directly.
Yeah. And so he's like, look, it's evil is how he described it. And it's because I think he actually understood it, but doesn't like the principles that it represents. Whereas, and maybe some of that rubbed off on Buffett as well. It's hard to say.
Oh, maybe it's reassuring. Maybe it's comforting, actually.
Yeah.
Bitcoin mining is obviously a big, important part of the network because it guarantees the security of the network and the functioning of the network and the maintenance of the network, all of that is miners. And maybe it would be good to give a bit of a overview about how mining is now, but especially how about the energy. And you said that it's the way Bitcoin fosters the monetization of something that has not been able to be monetized before. It's the energy.
Yeah, so people have a lot of misconception on energy, and it's I guess I pay extra attention to it because my background is electrical engineering, so I'm kind of aware of some of the inefficiencies. But basically, energy is not fully fungible. If you produce energy somewhere, you can't just teleport it costlessly to somewhere else. And if you transport it too far, it kind of takes up more energy than it took to produce it. So, for example, electricity, you can only transport it, several hundred miles or kilometers before eventually the cost of transporting it are too much. And so energy, and also the grid has to constantly balance. So there's fluctuating demand throughout the day and throughout the seasons, and there's fluctuating supply. And that delta has to be either used in some way or it's wasted. So there's literally, orders of magnitude more than the size of the Bitcoin network's energy usage is wasted by grids and by other things every day. For example, the World Bank found that natural gas flaring, so when you drill oil, you get oil out, and if you get a little bit of gas with it, it's not enough gas to build a pipeline or to take the gas. It's just not economic if you're only getting a little bit. So what do? They just burn it. They just light good energy on fire.
And creates pollution as well.
Yeah, it creates pollution. And there's nothing else they can do with it. Now, what Bitcoin miners can do is that if you put Bitcoin miners on site, you can run that natural gas through, a generator and power the Bitcoin miners and at least pay yourself a couple cents a kilowatt for that spare energy. And running it through that converts the methane to carbon dioxide more efficiently than burning it. And so it's actually less greenhouse impactful, and you make money from it. And yet World Bank shows that the amount of natural gas flared worldwide per year in terms of energy wasted is something like 8 times the size of Bitcoin's energy consumption.
Wow.
Just that. But then there's also, there's unused hydro. There's tons of unused hydroelectricity that they build this gigantic hydro dam. And it takes time for people to move to that area, or maybe people are not moving to that area. It's just unused power. When China built out a lot of their hydro, that was happening. It happens in Canada. It happens in parts of like northern Norway, for example. There's just unused hydro. And what Bitcoin does, Bitcoin is, unlike a data center, Bitcoin can deal with low bandwidth and low uptime. It can go out to remote regions, just be wherever the energy is. So it's got that kind of flexible aspect to it. And electricity is by far the biggest cost of Bitcoin mining. There's obviously a little bit of hardware costs, there's a little bit of personnel costs, but by far the biggest piece is electricity. So they can go into any region and say, look, we just want your lowest electricity price. And we'll, if you need just to shut off for 2 hours a day, or you need to shut off whenever there's a demand spike or a supply cut, we'll be the first to cut off because we have the flexibility to do that as long as we price in the lowest electricity when it's available. And so basically what it does, it fills in all the little nooks and crannies and inefficiencies in the system. And in one given cycle, maybe too many Bitcoin miners go to some place and people complain, oh, look, all these Bitcoin miners. But those, if they stay in a place where there's not energy abundance, then it hurts their cost, and they are less competitive than their peers. And so Bitcoin miners will disperse, and they have been dispersing to all the little pockets around where there's unused power. My favorite example is Gridless. There's a company in Gridless, in Africa called Gridless, and especially in the East African region, they go out to untapped river hydro, and they build little mini hydro dams on little rivers, river hydro, and they mine Bitcoin with it. And in developing countries, there's been a chicken and egg problem with energy infrastructure. It's really costly to build new power generation and transmission. And, the people there need it, but it's how are you going to basically prove that you can put this much cost in and recoup your cost? And yet the people in the area can't develop without electricity. So you have a chicken and egg problem. How do you get started? So one of the ways to do it is you can build a new hydro dam, and you can mine Bitcoin with it. That's like your anchor tenant. That's like your guaranteed initial tenant. Even if there's no other paying customers, Bitcoin is a paying customer as long as your electricity is cheap enough. And there's nothing cheaper than stranded energy. So they can build a hydro dam, they can mine Bitcoin with it, and as people in the surrounding area tap into that electricity, they can start to outprice the Bitcoin miners, and they can start to take a larger share of that. And that's what we're seeing. And so you have towns in Africa that were not electrified, that because of a Bitcoin mining new hydro setup, that town now has electricity. And that's a real thing that's happening on the ground.
It's so genius.
Yeah.
It's so genius. It's one of the things that I didn't even think about it. And then you were mentioning that, and we're talking about this with friends, and afterwards, it's unbelievable. It's literally just chasing for to be wasted or wasted energy, and completing that balance, actually.
Yeah, and it's been remarkable seeing it. So, for example, in 2020, Stone Ridge produced an investor newsletter written by Ross Stevens, their CEO. And he talked about how he sees Bitcoin mining revolutionizing energy over time. And he specifically said African hydro would be like the best place for it. He's like, imagine, rivers in Africa that are all this untapped energy being tapped and basically creating electricity for these people. And at the time, that wasn't really happening yet. And yet, 2-3 years later, Gridless is doing it and increasing their scale of doing it. And there's other companies doing it as well. Another thing he mentioned back then was people right now, people settle around rivers and coasts and basically along transportation networks, and we bring the energy to us. That's how we've always done it. We go out and get the oil, we bring it to us. We go out and get any power source, we bring it to us. Whereas what Bitcoin mining allows you to do is go to where the energy source is, especially things like remote work. If it entices people to move to this river, move to this region, move to this geothermal area, and during the gold rush in the United States, you'd have people find gold, and then a town would sprout up. Someone has to. All those people that are mining, they need haircuts, they need restaurants, they need all these services. And the same thing can happen with Bitcoin mining. You have these like little pockets build up, and people can gravitate toward where there's naturally occurring energy that this can make use of it. And someone has to service the people running it, and someone has to service those people, and you have a little micro town build up and access power. I think basically Bitcoin just fills in all the inefficiencies, and it just takes several cycles to get there. And every time Bitcoin crashes in price and it squeezes out all the miners that have too expensive electricity, over time only stranded energy makes sense economically.
Yeah, I've talked to a miner, and he said the best time, I asked him, like, when's the best time to start mining? Next bear market.
Yeah.
And he said the goal number in that is 3 years. 3 good years and 1 bad year. And then it purges. So it's actually also just like the economy should be, right? When you have a crisis, a recession, there's nothing bad about that. Just like wildfires, and Synthetic boss talked about that. Wildfires are good when it's small scale, they purify things.
Yeah.
There's like lots of things. When we have fever as well, same thing, we just purge things out. And that's beautiful. And but now I might just go off rail, but the story of mines in the US is a fascinating one. If you look at the beginning of the 20th century, the downside was that it was owned by this mega corporation. They would, so to say, enslave like all those people because they owned the houses, the whole economy basically, and they sometimes also had their own money, right? Their own tokens and these kind of things.
Yeah.
So maybe that should be then definitely not something that if we have like a Bitcoin a village based on mining, that with the Bitcoin virtue, hopefully this would not happen, obviously. That it's just in the hands of like the one company that comes there and basically enslaves, so to say, those people living there.